Hello everyone. This is the final episode of the chemistry practical advice series, and I'm sorry if I was too loud when I started, but okay. Uh, I think after this, there's only going to be the question and answer video if there has to be one, but I do not have any questions to answer. So if you really want your question to be answered, even if it's one single question, please just comment it below, or you can send me a message in Reddit. Okay, so yeah, let's start. So this episode is about the entire practical in general, like the chemistry practical, and I will put it in a way of I'll ask myself some questions about the practical in general and answer them so that maybe it may help you, or maybe if you're the kind who needs information, this might help you. Okay, so the very first thing I will tell you is what exactly happens on that day, the day that you do your practical, either during your prelims or during your A levels. Basically, actually, this is not very important to know until you do your prelims. I mean, the school will actually tell you how the thing will go. But I will just tell you briefly what happens. So, there will be like maybe three sessions on one day. So they will make sure everything happens in that one day. And depending on which session you are in, you can come either in the very early morning, in a slightly later morning around 10 o'clock, or in the around 12, maybe the afternoon session. So according to your maybe the timings are not right, but anyway, you get three sessions. So according to which session you come for, you may have to stay there for quite some time, or you may not need to stay there for quite some time. So if you're in the middle session, you don't really need to stay there for long. But the first session might need to stay for a very long time. And what do I mean by stay? Well, um, the practical doesn't just involve the only the practical. There's a lot of waiting involved before and after the practical. So before the practical, obviously you had to wait for everyone to come. Like that session, there's gonna be quite a few classes coming in and doing that practical on that day, depending on the capacity of your lecture theatre. I not lecture theatre. I mean labs, the capacity of the school's labs. So depending on that, you have a number of people coming, and as you enter, you have to show your identification card and your exam pass, whatever that thing's called. I forgot what it's called. Oh well. Anyway, you know what I'm talking about. So um yeah, so you had to go and wait somewhere first, and after waiting for some time, they will bring one by one the groups to the respective labs that you're assigned to. And you'll know the lab that you're assigned to beforehand. You know what group you're in beforehand. You may even get to know what your seat is, like where you're supposed to sit. So, with all this knowledge, you should go and sit in the right place, and you will do your practical for 2.5 hours. And the thing is, before you go in, you had to leave all your stuff outside. So if you bring your notes or something, you had to leave it outside in this box. If you're lucky, or if they were not lucky, you just leave it on the floor. So um yeah, so after you do your practical, you had to be quarantined if you're in the first batch of people, because they do not want any transmission of information. Yeah, this is a different kind of quarantine. Yeah, the thing is, the people from the third batch will be coming in later than the time that you finish, and they don't want you to tell the third batch what was in the practical, do they? They don't want people to cheat. So to prevent that from happening, they make people wait after the practical. And I will tell you more on what you can do with that time or actually I can just tell you right now, you can just use it to study, or if you're really tired after your practical, you can just talk to your friends, or yeah, just just wait there until you leave. So yeah, that's basically what happens on that day. It's very simple. There's nothing crazy going on here. It's just a practical. Anyway, um, right. So for the strategy, so now the next thing I would like to tell you is the strategies for studying for the practical, and I haven't really explored that in great detail in the previous video. So I will now tell you more on what I think is a good way to study for the practical. So, of course, if you have notes, you can refer to your school notes. Or if you don't really want to refer to only your school notes and you want to write your own notes to help you remember the information, you can do so. You just write your notes to your own preference. And yeah, that's basically it. There's nothing much to say there. And the things that you will generally need to revise are the steps for each kind of practical, like for example what you need to do when you do your titration, what you need to do when you do QA, and so on and so forth. And in order to do that, you can just simply go through all the past worksheets and practicals practices that you have done in your 2 years of JC. And yeah, I think that's about as much as I can tell about it. Just go through those things you're done, reflect on what mistakes or whatever you're done, reflect on the good things you're done, just remember all that stuff, and you can put that in your notes. Maybe that will help you remember what you need to do or what you don't want to do, in the sense. Yeah, so that's that is the first thing that you would need to revise. And the second thing is the stuff that your school gives you, like the planning notes and the templates, especially if I think your school will give you some kind of a model answer. So it would be good to revise that, because let's just space it. You don't need to be creative here. Just follow the template. Of course, if you do not have a template, which would surprise me in a way, just look at your practices and then copy the stuff from there. I think that can be your template in a way. So the instructions, in a sense. Yeah. So apart from the steps and step for the practical and the notes, what else would you need to revise? Well, this is quite important, and that is theory. Yes, it's not just doing a practical, you also have to remember theory. And the if you're too lazy to look through your entirety of your chem notes or something, you can focus mainly on your redox reactions, your energetics, kinetics, and organic reactions, because um actually by the time that you do your studying, you should have a general idea for the rest of the topics, and you don't need to go into much detail. So you just need to focus on the things that are most prevalent in the practical. Yeah, so redox may appear in titrations or maybe QA even. Energetics kinetics is based on the experiment, and what I mean is usually the thermodynamic part of it, like the delta H and whatnot, and also the order of reaction. And yeah, for the organic QA, if you need to write down your planning for organic QA and whatnot, you need to know organic reactions. You need to know how they work. So that's basically all the theory that you need to revise for this, I think. And yeah, apart from all of this, the last thing that I would say you must revise is any extra tips your teacher might have given you, like how to, I don't know, how to differentiate between AgCl and AgI or whatever, stuff like that. Maybe, I don't know what, your teacher would have definitely given you some tips. You might want to remember that. Maybe that may help you be a bit faster, or maybe be a bit more efficient. Or if there's any strategy that you came up with, like maybe you look through your old practices and you found out that you like to use the, I don't know, use the pH paper to check if it's acidic or something, then you like that strategy, you can put that in mind as well, just in case you forget to do it. Instead of forgetting to do it, you can remember that you did it in that past practice, I guess. So just these are all the things that you need to revise, and the next thing I will tell you is what exactly I did. What did I revise, or how did I study? Well, I did write a bunch of notes, in the sense like I just rewrote the stuff from the planning notes and the things that I would need to take note for the various kinds of practical. But I think after a while I realized that you don't really need to spend a lot of time doing notes in that sense. But if you but I still recommend that you do this, especially if you have the time, because it helps you remember things without having to read it like 4 times over or something. You just write it down once, it kind of sticks in your head. Especially if you're bad at memorization, this might be helpful in a way. Okay, so now I will tell you of other things that you would need to take note of in terms of studying or what you do before the practical starts. So the first thing is the timeline. In general, the practical is about a month before the other papers. It is in October itself. It's not in November. And so what I would like to say is just plan your study schedule well. And from personal experience, you can technically afford to focus on practical quite a bit for that week before the practical. But at the same time, revise some other things so that you don't forget your other things, you know. Because after the practical, you have to study full on for your A level. So, yeah. So just take note of that. But you can afford to spend quite a bit of time on your practical if you're already if you have full connaissance of your stuff, I guess. Yeah, so the next thing to take note of is sleep well the previous day. Of course, this is more important than studying until 12 a.m. Just sleep well, because I think if you've already done so much stuff beforehand, you would definitely remember some of it at the very least. You don't need to be burning the midnight oil for this. It's more important that, you know, whatever I'm gonna tell next, which is to be alert, aware, and awake. Yes, they all start with the A. Brilliant. Okay. So you have to be alert during the practical, you have to be aware, and you have to definitely be awake. If you're very sleepy, you won't actually be alert. So yeah. In other words, you have to be on top of things when you're doing your practical. And you have to be, you know, like if something happens, you have to be willing to come up with a solution immediately. Or if you feel like something might take too much time, you must be aware of it and then do something else or something like that. You get the point. um and finally, you have to be healthy. In other words, don't get sick. And one useful tip is to beware of buffets, because before the practical, we had like our final day of school, and there was a buffet afterwards in RI. So luckily I'm a vegetarian, and I don't really like eating the stuff in a buffet. I didn't eat anything there. But a lot of people ate the chicken or something, and then they got diarrhea. Oh well, it was bad because some people was still had diarrhea during physics practical, and that was not good. So, in order to not be in the same situation, I would advise that you avoid buffets at least a week before the practical happens. Yeah, it is very good advice. Anyways, so now I will cover what you do during the actual practical. Basically, not yeah, like the actual A level day, what you need to bring, what is needed or recommended. So what do you need to bring? You need to bring your stationery, of course, your pen, your pencil, your whatever you use, your ruler, your curve ruler, or if you don't use a curve ruler, you can bring that French curve. I use the French curve. I don't use a curve ruler, like the flexible ruler. I don't use that. Um, yeah, of course, bring your calculator, because you will definitely need to do some calculations. And by calculations, I'm not referring to titration one. I'm referring to energetics, kinetics. Uh, yeah, so you need to bring those things to actually do the exam. So apart from that, you would need your IC and your pass, that piece of paper that you had to bring for every paper. So just bring that as well. Maybe you can put it in a nice waterproof cover or something to make it less problematic. Um, so apart from that, you can bring your notes because, as I said earlier, you'll be waiting a lot. So you can bring some notes in like a somewhat transparent box file or something, and then you just leave it outside the practical room before you get in, and after you get out, you can collect it. So apart from notes and whatever, you can bring food and water if you're in the first group especially, you would need to be waiting for quite some time. And in yeah we they allowed us to bring snacks to eat after the practical, so you can bring food if your school allows it. And of course bring some water. Even though you're not allowed to drink water during 2.5 hours, at least drink some before you start, because I think it is very likely that they won't be using aircon on that day, and you do not want to perspire and then be super dehydrated. And for the same reason, actually you do not really need a jacket unless you feel like you're gonna get cold after the practical in the waiting area. So yeah, basically all these items that you need, please pack it in your bag or whatever you're gonna bring the previous day. And when you come to the location, don't bring your bag, only bring the stuff that you brought in the bag. Like you put your bag in the locker with your smartphone and your wallet, and then just bring all the stuff that you actually need for the exam. So yeah, that's that for what you need to bring. The next thing that I will talk about, on that day you have 2.5 hours, and what will happen in that 2.5 hours, well, you decide that for yourself. You'll get a paper to work on, and in that 2.5 hours you had to manage your time well. And as a general rule, I mean, you try to remember, you will have four big questions, I think. Wait, I don't know. But anyways, you will have like three experiments, and like one small planning and one big planning. So make sure you leave at least half an hour of time for your planning, and for the other stuff you can decide how you want to split up your time. If there's one particular segment of practical that you have difficulty in, you can allocate more time for that section, I guess. Yeah. So just do this, just think about it beforehand, so that on that day when you look at your paper, you can decide what you want to start with first, or how long you want to do each section. Yeah. uh yeah, so do take note of time management. Okay, so the next thing is troubleshooting. What if something goes terribly wrong, or you screw up something? Well, it happens sometimes, and I'll just hope it doesn't happen on that day. But you may still screw up on a small scale in that sense. And when you make a mistake or something goes wrong, well, what do? First, don't panic. I think I've told this many times, do not panic, because panicking is only going to waste more time. And second, the best thing you can do is, if your mistake isn't a huge mistake and you're able to estimate certain things, you can just bluff your results, because many a times you may not have time to redo the experiment. But if you do, in the special case that you do have a lot of time and you think you can finish the experiment quickly, you may as well choose to do the experiment again, especially if your mistake is a bit hard to rectify through bluffing. In the sense, you can do the experiment again and hope that you don't make a mistake again. So yeah, that's what happens when you troubleshoot. Of course, so the next thing, safety first. um Actually, for us, we had like this we had like ceiling fans and all that, and we had to be really careful not to break burette by accidentally ramming it into the ceiling fan. Yeah, that's how low the ceiling is. That's sad. But yeah, anyway, apart from stuff like that, generally, be careful. If you need to wear gloves, wear gloves. Or if you don't want to wear gloves, be careful anyway. Don't pour acid on your hand. Don't pour NaOH on your hand either. And don't pour anything funny on your hand. That's the point. You can, of course, if your hand gets stained with KMNO4, it's okay. But apart from that, don't get stuff on your hand. And if you do, just wash it as quickly as you can. Especially, I mean, if you're paranoid, you will wash it. I mean, yeah. And apart from that, just make sure you don't accidentally drop your glassware and then create a big mess and cause yourself undue stress with that kind of stuff. So be careful with your stuff, be careful with the chemicals, be careful with the glassware. And of course, wear your safety goggles, especially when you're handling chemicals. And when you're using the Bunsen burner, don't don't direct chemicals towards yourself or to other people. Direct it away from people in the sense. And yeah, that's about it. So the final thing I would like to tell is if you need to drink water or you need to use a toilet, well, if you want to avoid having to do that, well, just hold it in, I guess. Especially if it's not diarrhea or something and it's a normal day, just hold it in. I mean, to be honest, you probably held it in all the time during lectures or something. So yeah, you can always go after the practical is over. But if you have a lot of time, then maybe you can go. And for drinking water, please drink enough water before you start. I shall reiterate that if you feel thirsty halfway through, you could probably go and drink more water, but that's gonna waste some time. Yeah, time is precious. So yeah, drink as much water as you need before you start. Okay, I think that's about it. If you have any questions, please put it in the comments or send it to my Reddit account. Like give me a message or something. I'll show you my Reddit right here. And I think this is the last episode for this series. So thank you for staying through with me. And if you like this, please press the like button and subscribe. Thank you and bye.